Mexican President Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador had a pretty significant clash with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, following remarks from the U.S. top diplomat who basically lamented the recent killings of Mexican journalists in this Latin American nation. In a Twitter post, Anthony Blinken said, and I'm quoting him, "The high number of journalists killed in Mexico this year and the ongoing threats they face are concerning. I join those calling for greater accountability and protection for Mexican journalists." Following these remarks, the left-wing president, Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador, he defended his government's action to protect journalists from threats, including a mechanism to grant special federal security assistance to Mexican journalists. During a press conference in Mexican capital, Mexico City, President Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador told local reporters that Mexican authorities are currently investigating the murders of journalists, and they are also suggesting the secretary to keep up to date on those efforts. His government called for Anthony Blinken to keep up to date to those efforts, which, I mean, he said it in a pretty aggressive manner, of course. So what's even worse on this press conference was essentially that President Lopez Obrador also suggested that Blinken's remarks were interventionist. He said that these remarks were quite interventionist, claiming that Mexico is not a colony of the United States. I mean, we're talking about really tough declarations from the Mexican president in a moment where the relationship with the United States is not exactly the greatest. Because we need to remember that unexpectedly, his relationship with the former administration was actually quite good, despite the fact that President Donald Trump made some horrible comments about Mexicans, and on his declarations he used to be quite tough on the Mexican authorities. So many people actually believe that with the Biden administration we were going to see a better relationship between both nations. Nevertheless, this hasn't been the case. So, I mean, these declarations from President Lopez Obrador are a total disaster, because he basically wants to play the victim role in a problem that Mexico is suffering. I mean, the killing of journalists have been a common crime in this country. Seven journalists have been murdered in Mexico since the beginning of this year. And well, one of the most recent was the one of Lopez, who was the director of the Mexican online news Noticias Web, who was fatally shot in his office in Salina Cruz, which is located in the southern state of Oaxaca. So this is a pretty concerning problem that Mexico have been dealing with over the last few years, and there hasn't been any administration that have managed to somehow solve these problems. Of course, we need to remember that the people who perpetrate these types of crimes are mostly criminal organizations, members of drug gangs that feel threatened by the information that these journalists reveal. So in order to prevent this information from going out, and especially to set a precedent among journalists who dare to inform about these stories, they decide to kill these people. So of course, what Anthony Blinken said, it is an undeniable fact, but of course the Mexican president only wants to play the victim role, basically to appease his political base, essentially. We need to remember that President Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador is a pretty hard left-wing president, and this has been a classic tactic of the Latin American left, to always play the victim role. Reporting from Medellín, Colombia, Luis Orozco, Newsweek.